ओके, स्क्रीन शेयरिंग अलाउ करिए प्रोफेसर पटेल का स्क्रीन शेयरिंग.
Sir, hello.
एंड
Asim sir.
मधुरिमा स्क्रीन शेयरिंग अलाउ करिए उनका, प्रोफेसर पटेल का स्क्रीन शेयरिंग.
Sir, in which name? VP Pat. अच्छा, Badri sir.
क्यूब
Okay.
3 हो. हाँ, हेलो, गुड मॉर्निंग.
गुड मॉर्निंग
मधुरिमा उनका स्टार्ट
Yes,
करिए
yes.
स्क्रीन शेयरिंग. मधुरिमा
Sir, I have
उनका
given
स्क्रीन
the
शेयरिंग
access.
स्टार्ट
Yes.
करिए.
Sir, I have given the
प्रोफेसर
access
पटेल
to
का
Badri
स्क्रीन
sir.
शेयरिंग स्टार्ट करिए. प्रोफेसर पटेल स्क्रीन शेयरिंग और प्रोफेसर पटेल प्लीज स्टार्ट. या, वेरी गुड, इट हैज कम नाउ. It has come now. Sir, Professor Patel, we start in about 5 minutes time.
Okay.
Meanwhile, yeah, it's coming now. It is shared. It is shared. Yes. It is shared. Let the participant be come in more in number, and then we start the 3 minutes more. 2-3 minutes more. That we have few participants joining the meeting, then we will start the
Yes.
this thing. I'm waiting for more participants to join because about 300 plus registrations were there, and I'm expecting more participants to join. I wish that more and more people should take advantage of this knowledge which Professor Patel is going to share with us. And at present about 26 people are there, but maybe soon we'll have more people joining the meeting. Okay, so yes. VC Saab has told me that he will join after a while because he is busy. Professor Sunil Kumar, he will join after a while because he's busy in some board of governors bathak, some online bathak he's busy. So he wanted to interact with Professor Patel also, Professor Sunil Kumar. So he'll be joining later in 5-10 minutes maybe. Without much of ado, should we start our Professor Chaube has come? Professor Chaube has come? No, he has not come. More participants to come. Quite less participants are there. I think, okay. Yeah, the participants are increasing gradually. We start in 5 minutes because sufficient participants are there. Now, I would like to welcome everybody in this webinar, and this is the we have started a series of webinar. Do we have Professor Chaube here? Do we have Professor Chaube? No. Madhurima, Professor Chaube is there? No, he is not there. Okay. Let me know if the VC Saab comes, then let me know. Otherwise, I'm starting the introduction of today's keynote speaker, who is Professor Patel. Madhurima. हाँ मधुरिमा बोलो. हेलो. हाँ. अच्छा, माइक इज नॉट वर्किंग. तो ठीक है, चौबे साहब आ गए क्या? चौबे साहब नहीं है ना? नहीं, वीसी साहब ने ये कहा, वीसी साहब टोल्ड मी दैट ही विल बी ज्वाइनिंग इन बिटवीन. स्टार्ट कर दो, मैं बाय बीच में ज्वाइन करूंगा. जैसे वीसी साहब आए मुझे आप बता देना कि वीसी साहब आ गए, क्योंकि मुझे मालूम नहीं पड़ पाता है. मैं चालू कर रहा हूं आप, क्योंकि अब सफिशिएंट पार्टिसिपेंट हो गए, मैं स्टार्ट कर रहा हूं. बिल्कुल 100% मैं आपका कॉलर से. ठीक. हाँ. So we are. Am I audible to everybody? We are starting the today's webinar. Professor Patel is our keynote speaker today. He is a professor of IIT Delhi, and he is basically from the mechanical field only, but he is there in applied mechanics department, which is mechanical part only. He joined as scientist in 1994 in DRDO, and he served in the DRDO from 1994 to 2004. For so many years, he was in DRDO working for this the defense research of this country in the various capacities of scientist B and C and D grade scientist capacities. Then 2004 he joined IIT Delhi. I may be corrected if I'm wrong. 2004 he joined in IIT Delhi because he has got I mean, a lot of interest in the teaching learning process and research. From very beginning, he was interested in the research and the teaching learning process. So he joined finally the IIT Delhi. His area of specializations include finite element method, mechanics of composites, buckling analysis, smart structures and damage analysis, then fluid structural intersections, then rotating structures, and the experimental stress analysis. These are the research as well as his area of specialization. He is highly awarded person. He has received many awards to his credit, and he was given Young Engineer Award in 2001 by Indian National Academy of Engineering. Then Shri Ashok Chaturvedi Memorial Prize in IIT Bombay in 2000, in year 2000. Then PM Natu Memorial Award he has was given for outstanding for being an outstanding student, as he was always in the IIT Bombay also. And then he was also awarded with Sir J.C. Bose Award in 2000, and so many awards in his credit. His publications, the number are in innumerable publications by him. So many publications he have taken up. 29 international journals of high repute. He got published publication in 79 international journals of high repute with SCI impact factors. Then 25 national journals are credited in his account. 47 international conferences he has attended and presented the paper. 20 national conferences he attended and presented the paper. He has supervised about 11 number of PhDs and maybe more. I may be corrected. By now it will be more. I have taken it all from the website, and his supervision. And he is involved in many research projects, more than 5-6 sponsored research projects, and he is a senior faculty member in IIT Delhi. Now, Professor Chaubey is not there at the same time, so I invite Professor Patel to start his presentation. And we are very happy that he is with us, and he is a very good teacher, and his learning capacities are enormous, and I really have got high respect for him. Thank you very much for joining me and accepting my proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for your introduction. Nice.
His sound is not visible.
Hello.
Sir, your voice is not coming to me. मधुरिमा वॉइस नहीं आ रहा.
Hello. Hello, sir. Hello. Hello, am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Hello, Tiwari, sir. Hello. So, am I audible? Participants, am I audible?
Yes, sir. It's audible clearly.
I don't know why Professor Tiwari, sir, is not listening to me. So I will start then. Good morning to all the participants.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. And
Good
I am
morning,
going to talk about this finite element formulation of beams. That is the main topic I'm going to deliberate on. So if you see this slide, and my slides are visible.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
What you see here is a beam, and I'm you see the coordinate axes are marked X and Z. Is L and the cross section shown is a rectangular cross section, although the cross section can be of any shape. Can be circular, hollow circular, can be I section, can be a triangular section. It can be of any section, but there is a rectangular section. And in the Z direction, this is load Q. So if you see for the finite element formulation of beams, first thing we need to look at is beam theories. So typically what we use is, one is classical beam theory, or also known as Euler-Bernoulli beam theory, and second is so this Euler-Bernoulli beam theory is applicable, or the assumptions of Euler-Bernoulli theory are applicable if length to cross-sectional height L by H, which is shown in the diagram, if that is greater than 30, then Euler-Bernoulli beam theory would be applicable. In case of vibration problems, rather than L, because it would vibrate in different modes, so there is a concept of wavelength. So for vibration problems, if the wavelength to thickness ratio is greater than 30, then Euler-Bernoulli beam theory would be applicable. And if this length to thickness ratio or wavelength to thickness ratio is smaller than 30, then a more appropriate theory is first order shear deformation theory for beams. This is also known as Tymoshenko beam theory. There are also higher order shear deformation theories which are applicable if the L by H is very small, say of the order of 5 or less than 5. But I'm not going to talk about higher order shear deformation theories here. So first I will talk about formulation of beam finite element using Euler-Bernoulli beam theory. So the main assumptions are here that thickness of the transverse direction is very small. So and then if the thickness is small, as I said, relative to length, thickness relative to length is very small. Then the second assumption, that is normal to the neutral axis, will remain straight and normal before and after the deformation. So what it means is that if I have a beam, let us say, I'm just trying to sketch it here, and this is the beam, and now I am drawing the normal to the central neutral axis or the middle surface. So this is in the undeformed state. If the same beam deforms, and let us say it takes a shape like this after the deformation. So now if I would have drawn, let us say using ink pen on the beam, you have a real beam and you draw this line. When you observe this line in the deformed configuration, so that line would be like this. So it is normal to the deformed center line. So if this is the center line here, so this line which is shown here, if you see this line, it is normal to the deformed center line. So that is what is the meaning of normal to the neutral axis, will remain straight and normal before and after the deformation. And this implies that transverse shear strain. Now shear strain meaning is, if I take this direction is x direction, this is y direction. The angle between these two lines is 90 degrees. In deformed configuration, if I draw a tangent here and this normal is already drawn, so this angle remains 90 degrees. So that there is no change in the angle between lines parallel to x-axis and line parallel to z-axis. So the lines remain 90 degrees to each other, and that implies that transverse shear strain, typically denoted by gamma xz remains 0. So these are the assumptions of the Euler-Bernoulli beam theory. Now based on this, if I take any point at a location z, so say if I take any point over here, it is at a distance z, that point goes to this location. So this point, as you see, moves along x direction, also moves along z direction. So the displacement along the z direction is, if you see the displacement here given here, uxz is equal to u naught of x minus z into dw by dx. So what happens, this line here, as you see here, this line rotates by an angle dw by dx. So the displacement of this line from the center point that is, if I take this line here, so this distance, if you see this distance is minus z into dw by dx, because the slope of this line dw by dx, this angle is dw by dx. So that is how this displacement along x direction is u naught x minus z into dw by dx. Another assumption is displacement in the z direction, that is along the thickness direction. It varies only as along with x, but if I measure the deflection, say at bottom point, or I measure the deflection, say at top point, it remains same. So it is independent of z, it's only function of x. Now another special case here I take is that if the beam is subjected to only transverse load, which was shown in this slide here, so in that case you will find that the u naught x is going to be 0. So for small deformations, so that means this point initially it is here, and this point, they are at the same x location. The x coordinate does not change the point of the center line. So that is how u naught x would be 0. So therefore displacement along x direction would be minus z into dw by dx, and w, the displacement along the z direction, transverse direction. So see, u is the displacement along x direction here, and w is the displacement along z direction. So where it's already explained here, u is the axial displacement of any point, u naught and w are the axial and transverse displacement of the point on the mid plane. So now next concept we look at is the strain. So if you look at here, it's a one-dimensional problem. So independent component of strain is only one, that is normal strain epsilon xx. So this strain epsilon xx is the, if you take a line element parallel to x-axis and look at its change in length per unit original length, so that comes out as gradient of u along x du by dx. And if you see here, we have written u as minus z into dw by dx. So I know this epsilon xx comes out as minus z into d2w by dx square. So this is the expression for normal strain in the beam along x direction in terms of transverse displacement w. So, and again here we assume that stress along z direction and also along width of the beam is 0. So this is uniaxial stress case, and for that, if you assume that the beam is made up of linear elastic isotropic material, so for that the Hooke's law tells us that normal strain stress sigma xx is E times epsilon xx normal strain along x direction, and epsilon xx is given by this expression. So this goes to minus Ez into d2w by dx square. Square term is missing here, so this is actually square. Then now what I'm going to do is, there are two ways, either we proceed from the differential equation or using the energy principle. So here to derive the finite element level governing equation, I'm going to use energy principle. So what is known as principle of stationary total potential energy. So first we look at the expression for total potential energy. Audience, please, if you have questions in between, you can interrupt me and ask. So it would be nice if the, I know this class is interactive. So are there any questions so far? So, okay, if there are no questions, then I'll continue. So the expression part, total potential energy of the beam of length L and subjected to transverse load Q, which I had shown in the previous slide. So this pi is denoting the total potential energy of the beam, and it is consisting of two parts. So the first part, if you see here, this is strain energy stored in the beam, and the second term with a minus sign is the potential of externally applied distributed load. So first part, since the only non-zero component of stress in this is sigma xx, so only non-zero component contribution to potential strain energy is sigma xx into epsilon xx, integration over total volume of the beam, and into this q into w dx is the contribution of potential of the applied force. So if there is a displacement in the direction of force, so the potential of the force decreases, and that is why this minus sign, taking datum as the undeformed configuration of the beam. Now this volume can be written as B is the width. So if you look at what I'm doing is taking a differential element in the beam. In this beam, a differential small element here, and along the, so this is small differential element. Along x its length is dx, along z its length is dz, and perpendicular to the screen, its width of the beam is b. So this volume integral is written as half of integration over length of the beam and integration along the thickness from minus h/2 bottom surface to top surface plus h/2 sigma xx epsilon xx b dz dx, and minus qw dx remains same. Then you can actually
Excuse me. We are having our Vice Chancellor present over here, Professor Sunil Kumar, and I request him to welcome Professor Patel and speak few words. Sir, VC sir.
Hello.
Sir.
Good morning, everybody.
Sir, आपका
Good
कैमरा
morning,
चालू
sir.
कर दीजिए.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Good morning. Badri, how are you?
Good morning, sir.
I'm fine, sir. How are you, sir?
Fine, fine. So nice to see you here again as a professor of IIT Delhi in Applied Mechanics Department, है ना?
जी, sir.
क्या बात है? So you remember our last meeting at Pune?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So how is the life at IIT campus, and what way you would like to tell our students you can also reach at IIT as a professor?
Yeah.
because ultimately people like you who make the life more agile and give hope to everybody.
Sir, it's all our teachers, and credit goes to our teachers. Like teachers like
and
you, sir.
everybody would like to have you are doing wonderfully good at IIT Delhi, and you feel is a tough field wherein you are doing this structural analysis and all that, and you were involved with DRDO. Previously you were working with DRDO.
Yes, sir.
So how is the life at IIT as of now?
It's fine, sir. Yeah, we are this. I mean, everything is disturbed because of COVID. Academic.
So how the classes are going on there? The online mode again?
We have currently actually summer break, but before this summer break, we had online classes for some time. And for 5 graduating batches, the online evaluations have been completed. But for the other batches, it is still pending. So when the semester resumes, then the evaluation activities for other batches would be happening.
The whole admission process is going to get delayed this year.
Sir, PG admissions are over, MTech admissions and PhD admissions are over. But undergraduate admissions are pending because JEE main has to happen, then JEE advanced will happen, and then only the admission process will start.
So in what kind of research areas you are involved in as of now?
Sir, currently I am working on multi-scale modeling of nanostructures. That's one area. And another area is fluid structure interaction in blood vessels.
So is there any scope of getting internship for RGPU student at IIT Delhi?
Yes, sir, there is a possibility.
So Asim just explored
Yes,
this
sir.
possibility. Ultimately, the outcome of this particular workshop should be like this, that the area in which Badri is working, wherein if we can find one or two interested students to go IIT Delhi and do work with him.
Okay, sir.
So
I
that
explore.
this
I
should be the
explore.
outcome of this particular workshop. Anna. Thank
Yes,
you,
I
Badri, for
explore. I
accepting our
explore.
invitation and enlightening us. Anna. Thank you very much.
Exactly. Exactly. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Namaskar.
Thank you. Thank you. Now I request again Professor Patel to continue his
Yes, yeah.
elaboration.
Yes, sir. So I was talking about this total potential energy expression. So what you see here, the total potential energy expression. So this is the expression for total potential energy. Now the for system in equilibrium, that is, I'm talking about static equilibrium problems. So the first variation of this total potential energy is going to be 0. So that is known as the stationary principle of total potential energy. So what is written here is a variation, delta of phi is, that is variation of this total potential energy is actually equal to 0. Now the variation here is with respect to unknown quantities. So if you look at this expression here of strain energy, which is sigma xx into epsilon xx, then we have used this sigma xx as E times epsilon xx. So here you will have basically epsilon xx into E into epsilon xx. So when you see this, it is going to be E into epsilon xx square. When you take variation, variation operates like differentiation, but it is a different. Variation is of unknown quantities. So since it is E into the first part, energy part is E into epsilon xx square. So when you take its variation, it becomes 2 into xx into E into delta epsilon xx. So that term is written here as delta x epsilon xx transpose E into epsilon xx, and then integration over the volume of the beam minus q. Q is applied force, so it is known. The unknown is the transverse displacement of the beam W. So its variation dx is equal to 0. So this is the main equation which is used for deriving the element level governing equation for finite element. So now we continue further. So if there are any questions in between, you may please ask. So are there any questions? Okay, so if there are no questions, I'll continue. So now once we have written this governing principle, that is first variation of total potential energy equal to 0. Now we need to look at, since we are looking for the solution. So here W is a function of X. Now rather than approximating it over the entire length of the beam, the entire beam which is shown in this slide here, so the length of the beam is divided into the whole beam is you divide into a number of elements. Sorry for my poor freehand sketching. It is, I'm not drawing correctly the straight lines. So like this, you divide into a number of elements, and within each element you approximate the transverse displacement W, which is a function. Now there are basically for kind of approximation within the element should be used. There is a concept of nodal degrees of freedom. There is a concept of elemental degrees of freedom. So how do we choose these degrees of freedom? Degrees of freedom are nothing but the values of unknown variables at the node points and the values of derivatives of unknown variables at node points. So they are referred to as degrees of freedom. So if we know those values, we can know the deformed shape of the element, and that is why the name degree of freedom. No? So in this case, how do we decide this? So there are two main principles which govern what kind of distribution of W should be taken within an element. Here element is shown here. If you see here, this is the element and element length is denoted as LE. The local coordinate axis X is denoted as XE. Subscript E stands for element. And then the first node, leftmost node, this point is known as node. Similarly, the point on the other right end is second node. And here the degrees of freedom are W, that is value of displacement at this location, and the value of displacement derivative at this location. So similarly on the right hand side we have these 2 degrees of freedom. So now at each node there are 2 degrees of freedom. For the element as a whole there are 4 degrees of freedom. Now how did we choose this? So one is differentiability requirement within the element. So now if you look at, because in the expression for variation of total potential energy there is epsilon xx is there. If you look at the epsilon xx here, derivative of W. So whatever approximation we assume, typically the polynomial approximation within the element, it should be differentiable twice. So twice differentiable means we need to have something like minimum is a quadratic function. So quadratic function meaning is you take, let's say for example, W approximated within an element as C0 plus C1 XE plus C2 XE square. So this is based on the differentiability requirement within the element. That is, in the integral functional we have put epsilon xx. Epsilon xx is the second derivative of W, so it should be differentiable twice. So differentiable twice means a quadratic function. The second thing is inter-element continuity. Now when I talk of inter-element continuity, what it means is, let us say if you consider this element and this element, this is one element, this is another element. When this beam is subjected to load and it deforms, after deformation, this deformed line from the first element, this element, and the same deformed line from this element should be unique, should be same. And now if you look at the orientation of this line, is given by basically these 2 expressions. So you see displacement along x direction is given by minus z into dw by dx, and the displacement along z axis is given by wx. So these should be continuous when we go from one element here, this element, to this element. And that can be enforced in finite element if these 2 quantities dw by dx and w are the degrees of freedom, that is unknown quantities at the node points of the element. So now if you see here, we require W, and here Wx1 means dw by dx evaluated at node 1. So Wx1 means the derivative of W with respect to x evaluated at node 1. So these should be degrees of freedom at the node points. So if I have these 2 as degrees of freedom at the node point, when I put adjacent element here, that will also have these degrees of freedom. So I can equate these 2 quantities W and dw by dx, so that this line of the second element and this line of the first element, they would be one and the same. So the continuity will be enforced. So now since I require continuity of W and dw by dx, so these should be degrees of freedom at the node points. And now I have 2 nodes minimum, because now I have to connect this to the other elements. So 2 nodes means 2 degrees of freedom. So total degrees of freedom come out to be 4. So if the total degrees of freedom are 4, then when I assume the approximate solution for W, that is not within this entire element here, so the W should have 4 unknown constants. So 3 are already coming, C0, C1 XE plus C2 XE square from the differentiability requirement of epsilon xx within the element. And since I have 4 degrees of freedom, so I must have 4 unknown constants in the approximate solution. So the 4th term C3 XE cube is added. So you find ultimately that for a Euler-Bernoulli beam theory, beam finite element, two noded beam finite element with 2 degrees of freedom at each node, the approximate solution is assumed as a cubic polynomial. So there is a reason behind choosing W and dW by dx, that is deflection and slope as degrees of freedom from the continuity requirement. And then since there are two nodes, total 4 degrees of freedom. So there are 4 unknown constants in the approximate solution. Because these 4 unknown constants, C0, X is the local element coordinate, which is varying along 0 to LE along the length of the element, and C0, C1, C2, C3 are constants. So now see this C0, C1, C2, C3 do not have physical meaning. So what we do, we express these in terms of our degrees of freedom, which are physical variables. In this case, W is deflection and W comma X, Wx is a slope, dW by dx. So we try to write now we need 4 equations to express C0, C1, C2, C3 in terms of degrees of freedom. So first is that W1 is the value of W from this expression X equal to 0. So what is written here is W1 is equal to value of W at X equal to 0. And if we put here in this expression, so you find that if we X equal to 0, it only what we get is C0. So you get C0 equal to W1. So the first constant here, what you see in this expression, the first constant is equal to W1. That is this degree of freedom. Then second constant is W2, is the value of W at Xe equal to Le. That is at the second node here. So that is, now we put the Xe coordinate in this expression as Le. So you get C0 plus C1 Le plus C2 Le square plus C3 Le cube. Then come to derivatives. So Wx1, that slope here is dW by dx at E equal to 0. So if you differentiate this expression approximation with respect to Xe and then Xe equal to 0, you will get dW by dx as C1 plus 2C2 Xe square plus 3C3 Xe square. So if you put X equal to 0, you will only get one term, that is C1. So you get the second constant C1 is equal to Wx1, that is slope at node 1. Then second is W slope at second node, that is at X equal to Le. So Wx will be dW by dx at Le, which will be given by this expression C1 plus 2C2 Le plus 3C2 Le square. And now we already know C0 and C1 in terms of W1 and Wx1. Then only two unknowns left are C2 and C3. So these two equations can be solved for C2 and C3, and therefore finally we would express all 4 unknown constants in this approximate solution in terms of C0, C1, C2 and C3. So if you do this, that means from these 4 equations, if you solve for C0, C1, C2, C3 and substitute back here, and then in this expression you collect coefficient of W1 together, coefficient of Wx1 together, coefficient of W2 together, coefficient of Wx2 together, you get this form of expression. That is W within an element as a function of a element level local coordinate is given by this 1 minus 3x square by Le square plus 2xe cube Le cube. So this expression you see here is given by this. Now we call these functions which are multiplied with these nodal degrees of freedom W1, Wx1, W2, Wx2. So these coefficient 1 minus 3x square by Le square plus 2xy cube by Le cube, these are known as shape functions. So this is denoted as H1, this is denoted as H2, this is denoted as H3, this is denoted as H4. So then W is written as H1 W1 plus H2 Wx1. This is dW by dx. Wx1 is dW by dx at x equal to 0 at first node. So in the matrix vector product form, you can write it Wxc equal to this row vector h1, h2, h3, h4 into this column vector consisting of nodal unknowns, and together now this part is referred to as interpolation matrix. Typically in the finite element terminology, this is denoted as H, and this is known as vector of elemental degrees of freedom and is denoted as dE. So what is written here is H is the interpolation matrix, the shape function matrix, and D is the element level degrees of freedom vector. So this is very, very important when you develop any finite element or when you use any finite element. You should know what are the basic assumptions made in that with regard to the approximation of the displacements within the element. Like here we talked about Euler-Bernoulli beam theory. Then within the element, how the degrees of freedom are chosen, whether only displacements should be degrees of freedom or displacements and their derivatives should be degrees of freedom. That is governed by the continuity requirement across the elements. So I just explained you why we need W and dW by dx as degrees of freedom at the node to maintain the continuity of this whole beam in the deformed configuration. So this is what you get as the the approximation for the displacement W within an element like this. Now we have to, so here if you look at H1, H2, H3, H4, they are functions of XC and LE. LE is the element length, which you know because you know that your entire beam length and number of elements, so you know LE. And XC is the coordinate which varies along length of the element, so that also is known coordinate. Only unknown here is this W1, Wx1, W2, Wx2. So we have to set up equations to find out these unknowns, and to do that we need to substitute this approximation in the expression for first variation of total potential energy. That is, we have to substitute that approximation in this expression, and then we develop based on this the governing equation for finding out this vector dE, that is vector of elemental degrees of freedom. So now to substitute this expression in the expression for this total potential energy which is written here, we need the expression for epsilon xx. Epsilon xx is the second derivative of W. So we need second derivative. So if you see here, the second derivative of W with respect to element local coordinate x is written like this. So since these shape functions h1, h2, h3, h4 are functions of x, so we differentiate these and into dE. And actually also I forgot to tell you that these h1, h2, h3 and h4, this approximation, these shape functions are known as Hermite interpolation functions. So there is a name for these, this kind of interpolation, Hermite interpolation function. So then if you differentiate this, typically we call use another notation. When we, now if you look at this d2w by dx square, this comes in the expression for strain actually. If you see this strain here, it is minus z into d2w by dx square. So d2w by dx square is coming in the expression for strain. So we write the second derivative of shape function matrix consisting of that, this matrix, as B. And in the finite element terminology, we call this as strain displacement matrix. B into D is the vector of elemental degrees of freedom. Now we substitute one more thing we do here in this expression. If you substitute now the epsilon xx as minus z into d2w by dx square and carry out the integration with respect to minus thickness coordinate, that is z coordinate, from minus h by 2 to plus h by 2. So you will have here a term E z square b dz. So z square is the distance of a differential element, this element, from the z axis. So z square into b into dz in will be b into dz is the area into z square is the distance. So that integration can be written as second moment of area, that is area moment of inertia. So the expression for total potential energy can be written as, when you substitute d2w by dx square as b into d. So the first term is delta of epsilon xx transpose. So if you want to take delta of this expression here, delta, it would be b is a known quantity, and de, vector of elemental degree of freedom, is an unknown quantity. So its variation would be b into delta d. So if you substitute here epsilon xx transpose, so you get delta d transpose, and these are the values at node points, so independent of x coordinate. So can be taken out of the integration sign. So you get here b transpose E into I is the area moment of inertia, into b into dx E into dE. You would notice another thing here, that the quantities which are matrices or vectors are denoted by bold letter. Maybe if you are writing say on a piece of paper, then you could use the square brackets for denoting enclosing a matrix, and a curly bracket for denoting vectors. So here bold letters are used. So this is first part, strain energy part of the total potential energy expression, and E minus potential energy of the external forces is equal to 0. So it is equated. Second term, if you look at this term here, this term is, because whole thing is equal to 0, so this term is taken on the right hand side, and it is q into del w, and w here is h into de. So w transpose would be d transpose into h transpose, and delta would be, when we take delta of that, so it would be delta d transpose into h transpose. So that is how this is written as d delta d transpose integration over length of the element, q is the distributed load, h transpose into dxc. And now what we do, since this is delta d is arbitrary, we enforce another condition in as per the principle of stationary potential energy. The first variation of the potential energy should be 0 for arbitrary variation in the displacement. So this is arbitrary. So the coefficient of delta D from the left side and right side must be equal to 0. And that gives you what is known as element level governing equation, which is written here. So finally you get the element level governing equation as B transpose into EI into B into DXC into D. This is arbitrary, so we are equating its coefficient. So other things remains here. So this whole term is equal to the coefficient of delta D transpose on the right hand side, so is equal to this. And now this part, integration 0 to LE B transpose EI B DXC. This is known as element level stiffness matrix, and this integral on the right hand side is denoted as element level load vector. So are there any questions so far?
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Here K2D is the, what is the meaning of F is equal to F? What is the meaning of F? K2D is equal to F.
You're talking about this KD equal to FE, right?
Yes, sir.
So this see, K is the stiffness matrix, stiffness of the beam element, and D is the vector of elemental degrees of freedom. And the right side, because in the beam there is a distributed load. So because of that load, we call this as a load vector. So you have distributed load acting on the element, and that load is distributed, finally assigned to the nodes. So if you look at this, in this whole, there would be distributed load. That load is assigned to this node and this node, and whatever contributions we get, that as vector of external vector. So this Fe is the vector of external, which is basically this quantity, which is there on the right hand side.
Okay.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Yeah, so if there are no questions, we proceed further. So finally, if you look at, so ultimately when you are solving problems using beam finite element, element level governing equation is important. But of course, for understanding what are the assumptions behind that, and what do we mean by degrees of freedom and why these degrees of freedom, yeah, to understand that you need to know this basic theory. Now B is the second derivative of these shape functions h1, h2, h3 and h4. h1, h2, h3 and h4 are defined here, these four shape functions. So we take the second derivatives of these. When we take the second derivative, we get this B matrix B. Although I did not tell you another thing, that why I denoted this as matrix and this as a vector. So this is a general notation. In more involved problems where there are more than one variable, here there is only one variable W, that is transverse displacement of the beam. So this is just a row vector. But if there are more unknowns or variables, this will become a rectangular matrix. So that is why I have used the notation matrix for this. And irrespective of the problem type, this will always be a vector, column vector. So that is why I have denoted this as a vector. So now if you put this derivatives of the shape function here, so if you look at this, B is going to be 1 by 4 matrix, as you see. Its transpose would be 4 by 1. So this B transpose is a 4 by 1 matrix. This B is 1 by 4. So, and EI is of course a scalar quantity. So when you multiply by this 4 by 1 into 1 by 4, this will be a 4 by 4 matrix. So after the multiplication, you carry out the integration. You get the stiffness matrix. Similarly, here if you see H transpose, H was, if you look at here, H was this. This is your H, which is a row, in this case, a row vector, which is of size 1 by 4. When you take the transpose, it becomes 4 by 1 and carry out the integration with respect to XE, you will get a vector of 4 by 1, and that is nothing but your FE. So if you carry out these integrations, this is the form of stiffness matrix you get. So 4 by 4 matrix, EI is outside, that means it is multiplied to all the terms here. So like 12 upon LE cube. So you, after the integration, you get these. These are the elemental degrees of freedom. This side is the load vector. Now you see the load is a transverse load. So if you look at the one beam element, that is this particular beam element, and there is a, let's say, uniformly distributed load in this. So if you look at the total load which is acting on this beam is going to be Q into LE. So if you see here these two terms in the right hand side, load vector FE, so you have Q into LE by 2, and then the third row is also Q into LE by 2. So you see this is exactly half of the total load which is acting on the beam. But because we derived this load vector using the shape functions, we are getting these additional momentums. This is actually moment, this is a moment. So there now here onwards for the analysis of beams, there are two approaches. One is known as the lumped load vector, lumped, and another is consistent load vector. So in case of lumped load vector, yeah, somebody is asking questions. Yes, please. Yes, hello. So this is a lumped load. If you are using these two terms, the second term here and this second term is 0, then it is a lumped load vector. If you consider as it is, then it is a consistent load vector. So we call this as the element level governing equation. The assumption this is that EI is constant within the element and Q is constant within the element. That is how this integration is performed. Now so this is just the element level governing equation for a static problem. Actually for vibration, you also need to consider kinetic energy. So we introduce another quantity called mass matrix. I have not shown that here. Then you now want to see how this element can be used to solve problems of bending of beams. And so I have shown an example here. Next thing is we assemble the elements and then impose the boundary conditions. and then finally solve the problem. So here I have shown just the assembly of two elements. So the whole beam, so there is a whole beam divided into two elements of equal length in this case, although that is not necessary. The beam lengths can be unequal. So this is element 1 and this is element 2. And there are now 3 nodes overall. So this is first node of the assembly. This is the intermediate second node of the assembly, and this is the third node. If you see, the first element is defined between the global node numbers 1 and 2, because there is also why I'm introducing this terminology global, because now when we derive the element, so element has node 1 and 2. It's first node left side, second node right side. So that is local node number 1 and 2, and then here we have 1, 2, and 3 global node numbers. So the first element is between global node number 1 and 2. The second element, that is this element. This laser pointer is visible, no? Yeah. So this is the second node, second element. It is defined between global node number 2 and 3. So now if you see connectivity, for the elements, the first element is consisting of global nodes 1 and 2. Second element is consisting of global nodes 2 and 3. So now if you look at, because in the basic element we have 2 degrees of freedom at each node. So also in this case, each global node will also have 2 degrees of freedom. So here W and derivative of W at this node, W and derivative of W, that is rotation, deflection and rotation here. So when I look at the assembled system of equations, I will have this stiffness matrix, and I will have this vector of unknown degrees of freedom. So since there are 3 nodes, each node is having 2 degrees of freedom. So you have this vector of global unknowns as 6 by 1 vector. And similarly, the right hand side, this load vector will also be 6 by 1 vector. And now what we do, because the first element is consisting of node 1 and 2, the degrees of freedom, if you look at the contribution, first element is going to contribute to these 4 degrees of freedom. So the red color, elements are written here in red color. Those are the contribution of this first element to the global stiffness matrix, and the blue color elements are written, which are the contribution from the second element. So if you see, the first element is defined between these 4 degrees of freedom. So first 4 columns here up to here, and the first 4 rows from here to here are occupied by the first element. So if you see this stiffness matrix, which is a 4 by 4 matrix, is added into the first 4 rows and columns of the global matrix. Then if you look at the second element, if you count the degrees of freedom, so this is number 1, this is number 2, this is number 3, 4, this is number 5 and 6. So the second element is involving degrees of freedom, column or row numbers 3, 4, 5, 6. So the contribution of this element is going to row number 3, 4, 5, 6, column number 3, 4, 5 and 6. So as you see, because we have taken the element lengths identical, so the second element in blue color is getting added into third, fourth, fifth, sixth columns and corresponding rows. So you see in the contributions here, there is an overlap between the contributions of first element and second element, and otherwise these are independent. Where we don't have anything, there is no coupling, so these terms are actually 0. So this stiffness, now you see this one, this is known as a global stiffness matrix. Global in the sense that it is for the entire structure. And on the right hand side, similarly, if you see the assembly of this load vector due to distributed load, whatever distributed load you have here, you have the red color ones are contribution to first 4 rows 1, 2, 3, 4, and second element since it contributes to row number 3, 4, 5, and 6. So these are having contributions in row number 3, 4, 5, and 6, the second element. So this is finally the global load vector for this assembled system. Now, if you look at, there are some properties of this stiffness matrix. So you will find when we talk of element level stiffness matrix, this would be a singular matrix. So that means if you find the determinant of this matrix, it would be actually 0. No, that is, it is not invertible. And similarly, because this global stiffness matrix is obtained from the element level stiffness matrix, so this is also singular. So be inverted, it will not be possible. Its determinant is going to be 0. So we cannot solve these equation at this level. We have to first impose the boundary conditions, and then after imposing the boundary conditions, we solve these equations. So now next thing is the boundary conditions. So the boundary conditions, if you look at, let me say that these two ends, the beam, this is a fixed beam. So in your strength of materials or solid mechanics, you might have analyzed a fixed beam using 3-moment method, Clapeyron's 3-moment theorem. So fixed means here, now the boundary conditions would be, if it is fixed, it's not allowed to move in the transverse direction, so W1 would be 0. It is not allowed to rotate, rotation of the cross section is not allowed, so Wx1 would be 0. Similarly, at this end, the deflection is 0, not allowed to move and not allowed to rotate, the cross section is not allowed to rotate, so W3 would be 0. So if you put W1, Wx1, W3 and Wx3 equal to 0 in these equations, so then we left with only two unknowns, that is W2 and Wx2, that is for the center node. So for that, then these are the only two unknowns and we have to solve for these unknowns. So for solving for these unknowns, we consider the equation number 3 and 4, because W2 is a third variable and Wx2 is a fourth variable in the vector of unknowns. So we consider the equation number 3 and 4. In that, this contribution will go because it is W1 and this is multiplied with W1. W1 is 0, so this contribution goes. This is multiplied with Wx1. Wx1 is 0, so this contribution goes. So what you will be left with is this central 2 by 2 matrix into W2 Wx2 is equal to QLE by 12, and the right hand side this 6 plus 6 12, and this would be 0. So finally you have two unknowns, W2 and Wx2, and two equations for solving for the W2 and Wx2. So you solve these two, you get W2 and Wx2. W1, Wx1 are 0, W2, Wx2 you solve from these equations, W3 and Wx3 are 0. So now you know the deflection. Now see if you want to calculate. So I think the solution part you can yourself do. I have not done it here. So now if you want to find out the deflection within the first element anywhere, so you go back to this interpolation. So this you can put the value of xe, the element local coordinate x, in this expression for he. You already have W1, Wx1 0. These are calculated from the global equations. So you can find out W at any point. You might want to find out the slopes, you differentiate and evaluate. Want to find out the strain, take the second derivative, evaluate at any point within the element, and evaluate the strain and therefore stress. So this is the the application of this beam finite element for solving a typical problem like this. What I have listed here is the different types of boundary conditions. So I have already explained you about this. So here only beam is drawn. So if I so now this case is a simply supported. So you have a support like this. So I think you any a book on strength of material, if you see, you will find these boundary conditions. So for a simply supported beam means it is resting on a, it is hinged here on a roller. So this in W would be 0, this in W would be 0. dW by dx would not be 0. And if you look at in the finite element, here the degrees of freedom are only W and Wx1. So I am talking of the boundary condition only in terms of W and dW by dx. That is which is denoted as Wx. If you are solving a fourth order differential equation using integration approach, then there would be additional boundary condition. Here also the bending moment would be 0. So d2w by dx square would be 0. Here also d2w by dx square would be 0. This is the clamped case. I have already explained to you while explaining how to solve the problem. If you have a clamp, this side is fixed. So that means this end is fixed. And this side is simply supported. So this is resting on a say a circular body which is supported on a ground like that. So in that case, this side is the deflection and its slope would be 0. And you can use any number of elements in between. These are the boundary conditions only at the ends. W is equal to 0 here. And of course, for a fourth order differential equation, here d2w by dx square will also be 0, but not required in finite element simulation. So this is similarly the clamp free, you can correlate. In case of clamp free, both w and dw by dx are unknown quantities. So in terms of finite element, there are no boundary condition in terms of that. So I think I have already taken 1 hour. So I also wanted to talk about Timošenko beam theory, but since the time is over,
Yeah.
I would like to stop. Sir, should I continue or should I stop?
I think 1 hour is enough. You must be tired by now. Or if it is over, then it is very good. Like otherwise, if you want to sum up everything in 2-3 minutes, like you can continue for 2-3 minutes, or like if you want to sum up, or if you just
Yeah, so
like,
I think I have this formulation for Timošenko beam, but it will take time. So I will finally only come to this slide. So this is vibration, although I have not talked about. So all of you, if you notice, what I did, that beam element is only considering the stiffness and load vector. But for a vibration problem or a dynamics problem, you also need to consider the inertia forces. So the way I have shown the development of element level Gordon equation, you need to consider the kinetic energy. So that will give rise to mass matrix. So here what is written is the differential. So vibration of a beam is governed by a fourth order differential equation, which is written here. For the derivation, you need to refer to any book on vibrations dealing with vibration continuous systems. And for free vibration, the forcing function is 0, so the differential equation is of this form. And then we assume that the motion is a harmonic motion. So motion, if it is a harmonic motion, we can assume W to be W as a function of x into e to the power minus I omega t. And then we substitute d2w by dx square as minus omega square into wx2 in this expression. So we get this form of equation of motion. So this part would lead to the stiffness matrix, and this part would lead to mass matrix. And then for a free vibration, you solve using any eigenvalue extraction subroutine. So if you want to use softwares like ANSYS, Abacus, Nastran, NISA, there are already, you choose the element, prepare your structure, and then you can solve the eigenvalue problem. You get the natural frequencies and mode shapes. So I just wanted to explain you here, this is the I beam, which is prefixed. So this end is free and this side it is fixed. So if you see here, this is vibrating actually in the the mode of vibration you see. So you see the displacement is 0 here, and you also see in between here this displacement is 0. So actually this animation is shown for the second mode of vibration. And you see this, in this case, the displacement is in the along this height of the beam. Similarly, there is another mode which is along the width of the beam. So mode is similar, but the displacements are along width of the beam. Now, if you see this has a width here, and this is a torsional mode. So this all you can do now through the softwares. You can create your geometry, choose the right element, and solve an eigenvalue problem, and then you can have animation of the mode shapes. So for example, this is a circular plate. It can vibrate in different modes, and there are many modes possible. These are only few modes which are shown here, and there are many modes which are possible. So these are possible modes. Here you see the whole plate is either moving at a given time in one direction. Here if you see the central portion is moving in one direction, the outer portion is moving in the other direction. This is another mode of vibration. So if you are having these kind of plates in the support structure, these kind of beams in buildings, bridges, and even the your turbine blades in the either you talk of steam turbines or you talk of hydraulic turbines. So blades you will have. So the blades can undergo different kinds of vibrations, and because of vibrations, there would be dynamic stresses, and there could be a fatigue failure and so on. So you have to analyze these from the fatigue point of view. You have to carry out vibration analysis, free vibration analysis, force vibration analysis, estimate the stress, what is the minimum stress, maximum stress, what is the frequency, and then how many cycles it can sustain before it undergoes fatigue failure. So I think this is the last slide. So in summary, what I did, I started with Euler-Bernoulli beam theory. I have explained you what are the assumptions in the Euler-Bernoulli beam theory. It is very important to understand those assumptions. Then how to write the expression for total potential energy and its variation. Then very important concept is how to choose the approximate solution within an element. So I said two things, differentiability requirement and continuity requirement across the element. That is known as inter-element continuity. So based on that, we said that we need to have W and dW by dx as degrees of freedom at the each node of the finite elements, and therefore 2 nodes, and 2 nodes means total 4 degrees of freedom. So we ended up choosing a cubic polynomial, then express the unknown constants in terms of the elemental degrees of freedom, then develop the element level governing equations, then assembly, how to assemble, how to impose the boundary conditions, how to solve the equations, and then how to do the post processing to evaluate the results inside the each element. And then this last slide is on vibration. So with this I conclude, and I thank you all for your attention, and also I thank Tiwari sir for giving. Tiwari sir was my teacher in BTech, Bachelor of Engineering, and he was an excellent teacher. And with the teachers like him, I am here in this position. So credit goes to all my teachers. With this, I thank all the participants. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for giving.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It was so nice of you that you have you have find some time for our small seminar and webinar rather. And I would like to disturb you in future also for this cause, for some knowledge imparting motto. And I hope this seminar was very fruitful for the listeners. And if anybody has got question, then they can ask the question. If any question is there in the last, if somebody is interested in asking some query, then they can raise the query. Like,
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Yeah, Faizan. Yes.
Yes, sir. Sir, do you explain the Kirchhoff's plate? Explain it, and how can you solve the problem? Kirchhoff's plate के बारे में था.
Yeah, this Kirchhoff plate you were asking, no?
Yes, sir.
So now you have to actually go for the plate equations. So first, this is like you see this discretized into a certain number of elements, no, separated by these lines you see. So for this, you have actually I had this, but I think because of the time constraints, now
Yeah, sir.
of a plate. Now in the beam you have seen that W, that is the transverse displacement along the thickness direction, was a function of X. And for the plates, now this W, which is a transverse displacement, would be function of X and Y. So the Kirchhoff plate theory, we again assume that normal to, the way I have explained normal to the beam, similarly normal to the plate remains normal in Kirchhoff plate theory. Based on that assumptions, the displacement along X direction can be written as minus Z into del W by dx. In beam case, if you remember, it was minus Z into dW by dx. So it was U, but then you have also displacement along the Y direction, which is minus Z into del W by del Y. This U naught and V naught would be 0, and W is a function of X and Y. This W equal to W naught is a function of X and Y. Then you have to talk of now 3 non-zero independent component of strains, 2 normal strain and 1 shear strain. So this is normal strain along X direction, normal strain along Y direction, and shear strain, that is if you take 2 line elements parallel to X and Y, and then their change in angle is your shear strain. And then you, based on this, you write finally the expressions for strain, then expression for total potential energy. In case of beam, you had only these terms. In case of plate, you will have these 3 terms. And then variation of this, the relationship between stress and strain, assuming that thickness direction normal stress is 0, so we use what is known as plane stress condition and linear elastic isotropic material. So this will be the constitutive relation, and then you develop the element level governing equation from the this equation, and finally you have KED equal to FE, where Ke and Fe are defined like this, and then you assemble, impose the boundary condition, and then you can solve the problem. So this is how the Kirchhoff plate problem would be handled. So I briefly explain you what it involves.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Very good presentation, sir, and very
Thank you.
helpful for supporting.
Good, thank you.
See,
Thank you.
I know this is a topic which I teach in 2 to 3 lectures. So now I have condensed it into 1 lecture. So I think maybe I have been brief at many places. So maybe if you have not followed, you can ask questions on those.
Okay, that was very knowledge giving and motivating presentation, and it has agitated minds of all the participants, and we look after more enlightening lecture from your side in future. Whenever you are free, we will catch hold of you, and we will arrange the webinars, because digitalization has many negative points, but at the same time it has got positive points also, like we don't have to travel, and we don't have to waste our energy in the traveling, and unnecessary fatigue of traveling is not there. We can sit quietly in our house, and we can deliver our we can communicate our knowledge to the others by the digital mode. So thank you very much once again from the mechanical engineering department, from the side of mechanical engineering department, and we look after more lectures from your side in future. And now for all the participants, I have got one information that not next week exactly, but on 8th of August, we have got another webinar by Professor Vivek Bajpayee from IIT ISM Dhanbad, and he'll be speaking on micro machining. So thank you, Professor Patel, for giving your precious time to us. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.